Well, speaking of things that aren't a cover up, we have the White House just being open about something, and that's to remove your Second Amendment rights. That's to ban your firearms, folks. The Senate just passed banning assault weapons, which will show you kind of which weapons they're going to ban. But let's hear it from the horse's mouth during yesterday's White House press briefing on banning assault weapons.
See?
Sort of the Kentucky shooting, in your statement at the top of the briefing, you're pretty critical of Republicans, but you didn't mention anything that the president wants to do, is doing himself about this. Is he at the end of his ability to do anything when it comes to gun violence in the U.S.? Is he effectively at this point powerless?
Look, Zeke, as you know, and as I've talked about, the president has talked about many times, the president in his first 2 years of the administration has done more executive action than any other president when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to stemming gun violence, when it comes to protecting our communities, our schools, and so he's taken action. He has taken action over and over again. Just last month, he was on the West Coast announcing another executive action, and we are seeing from these executive actions that he signed, more than a dozen, that the Department of Justice has taken some actions and pushing forward some of the kind of provisions in those actions, especially as you look at red flag laws and those types of programs. More than $300 million went to about 49 states and territories.
And it's not going to do anything. So you just spent hundreds of millions of dollars for something that isn't going to. I wish it would work. Again, I wish red flag laws would work. And in theory, they should work, by the way, in theory. But in practicality, we've seen time and time again where they are not working, but we're still going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this stuff. And you also got to love the irony that she's talking about and basically excited about them utilizing executive actions. This is the Democrat Party thinking, you guys, is that big government is good government. The more stuff that we push as an executive branch, when there's supposed to be a limitation to our powers, is a good thing. In the Democrat mind, that is a good thing. And it also is kind of been seeping into the Republican Party again, which I'm a registered Republican. I voted for Trump in 2016. I'll vote for Trump again. I've only voted for Trump, actually. What I'm trying to say is Trump himself was pushing through executive orders as well. I am not a fan of the president pushing through executive orders. He's supposed to just basically be a fly on the wall, kind of somebody that's away from the spotlight. He's just there, going back to the old times, and basically not in front of everybody, constantly saying knucklehead things or even saying good things here. He's just supposed to be there, you guys. But now we've come so accustomed to executive orders, this, going to other states, pushing this, an overreach of powers, and just being basically just throwing it out there as if it's nothing, which is insane. We got to get out of this mindset that this is just a normal thing to be talking about. That's not the structure of government. That's not how it should be, even though it's there. But it's amazing to me also that the Democrat Party is talking about crime. They're talking about, removing your Second Amendment rights. They're talking about this in certain cities. Look at Democrat-ran cities. The crime is through the roof. And we've talked about how The View, specifically Whoopi Goldberg, was talking about, well, it's red states that have the most crime. True. But this is what they do with manipulation of data. Once you look at those red states and you zoom in, it's the blue states that are being ran by Democrats, or should I say blue cities that are being ran by Democrats in red states that is causing all the crime. So this is how they cover up the data. This is how they push a certain narrative. All the while, you have Alvin Bragg of New York not prosecuting anybody, but going after Donald Trump for $130,000 of hush money that happened years ago. That's outside the realm of statute of limitations. At least that's one of the theories. That's what he's going to spend his time on. Not actually the average American. Not actually spending time protecting them. They want to sit there and go after Donald Trump because of Trump derangement syndrome and go after Republicans, which is so typical of the Democrat Party. Like I said, they've technically always done this, but it's really prevalent during the Obama administration, and it's really been exacerbated here with the Biden administration, the rest of the Democrat Party. I mean, it's so much irony in that statement of like, oh well, he's going to these states to lower crime. What is your party doing about crime other than exacerbating it all? There's a reason why people are leaving Democrat-ran areas. There's a reason why they're fleeing to red areas.
to put that into place in those states. So there is actions that we have taken. The thing is, the president cannot do it alone. You know this. There is a legislative process that needs to
blame
happen,
our Republicans?
and Congress needs to act. And I listed out to ban assault weapons. Yes, the president mentions that over and over again. And high-capacity magazines, require safe storage of firearms, require background checks for all gun safeties, eliminate gun manufacturers.
There are already background checks, for the love of God. They're already there. Anybody that's purchased a firearm legally, there are already background checks.
Immunity from liability. Those are the things that need legislative actions. And so he cannot do it alone.
Can we go back 5 seconds? Because I believe she talked about liability on gun manufacturers.
Require background checks for all gun safeties, eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability.
That's insane. That is literally insane. And again, the objective, if you heard, was to get rid of assault weapons, which is virtually all weapons. I mean, they talk about how the assault weapons is the semi-automatic weapon. We've heard that from Joe Biden's mouth himself. So they sit there and try to just utilize this word that nobody else utilizes. They want to remove your firearms, folks. They're being clear as day. One of the mechanisms is, yes, to do it legislatively, but the other mechanism is to do it legislatively, not just literally taking your guns, going door to door and removing them, or doing a gun buyback program. But the other function here is to institute a legislation that, in a nutshell, puts gun manufacturers liable for somebody else committing a crime. I mean, where does that end? I mean, you can do that with knives. Gun manufacturers who manufacture knives is somebody basically utilizing a knife to commit a murder or a mass murder, which we've seen in the UK and other countries that have a lower a regulation of, or higher regulation of guns, or no guns at all. Furthermore, I mean, where does that stop with literally anything? I mean, you could stab a person in the neck, multiple people, by the way, or just stab a bunch of people with a pencil. Should those manufacturers of now pencils, I know it's an insane argument, but it still holds true nonetheless, that they're liable now for somebody else's actions, utilizing something of which it may or may not have been intended for use of. Insane.
The things that need legislative actions. And so he cannot do it alone. And so we need Congress to act. And if you think about assault weapons ban, we know when the president was involved in 1994 to get that done, we saw gun violence go down. And when it sunset 10 years later, it went back up. So we know what could work. And that's why you continue to hear the president calling on Congress to take action.
So you're not announcing new actions now, and is the sense the president's done everything that he can himself?
Well, the president is always going to find ways. So is his team. Here we have the Domestic Policy Council. You have other offices here at the White House. You have the Department of Justice. We're always going to find and figure out ways that we can take another step outside of all of the historic steps that this president has taken to announce another way to protect communities. But the president has done the work. Now we need Congress to act.
And just to follow up Ken's question to
And Congress has acted, folks. The Senate passes a ban on assault weapons. Here's what would be banned under the law. Okay, so we're going to go through this relatively quickly, but Senate lawmakers voted 27 to 21 Saturday afternoons for House Bill 1240, which would pass the purchase and sale, which would ban rather the purchase and sale of assault weapons in the state of Washington. And the reason why we look at certain states is because there's an idea there that this would extrapolate to other states, or at least that's the tendency to see what happens or does happen. The bill was proposed, as you can imagine, of a Democrat. It was passed through the House. Quote, young people are taken to the streets and will hold us accountable if we don't do something. This comes from a Democrat, of course, Patty Kugler. Or Kudiger, I don't even know how to pronounce her last name. When we're talking about mass shootings and the killing of people quickly and without warning, we're talking about assault weapons. These people are so stupid, man. These people are so stupid. It's semi-automatic firearms. Stop using assault weapons. And when you hear somebody say assault weapons, just throw out their argument automatically because they're knuckleheads. And that's why we're here today. And we're here to say enough is enough. So what are they going to do? They're going to take away your right to own firearms. So it says here, HB 1240 would prohibit the manufacture, importation, distribution, sale, or offer for sale of any assault weapon. Some exceptions for licensed firearm manufacturers and dealers are baked into the legislation, allowing law enforcement agencies to continue to purchase from firearm dealers and manufacturers, for instance. Exceptions are included for those who inherit an assault weapon. You gotta love how they're just throwing this word in legislation just willy-nilly. And the bill would not regulate possession for Washingtonians who currently own an assault weapon. Isn't that amazing? So you can have a guy or gal, or non-binary, right? Because that's what we're told, and that's what we're trying to be sold on here, is that you could be any other or all in between. We got to use that because a lot of trans people are shooting and conducting these mass shootings, by the way. So we got to be inclusive here. We got to be inclusive. Folks, you already have an assault weapon, and for those that are on audio, we have a podcast on Podbean, if you haven't noticed. We're on all major distribution platforms, folks. So if you want to listen to this in your car, going shopping, or you want to kind of throw it on in your car while your Democrat is strapped in on the passenger side of the car and can't get out because you're going 80 miles an hour on the freeway and subjecting them to truth, we would love that as well. But it's amazing that you can have somebody literally owning a firearm before this legislation that goes and commits a mass murder with the firearms of which you're trying to ban. I mean, let that one sink in. I'll get to my point later, I promise. Exceptions are included for those, again, that inherit all this stuff. Violations of the proposed legislation would be a gross misdemeanor, which could include jail time for up to 364 days and a fine of no more than $5,000. You had some debate on the bill, as you can imagine, but what I want to show you is the list itself here of the guns. So AK-47 in all forms, by the way, automatics have been banned for decades. You have AK-74s, you got the Bushmaster Carbon 15. I mean, heck, what else? I mean, there's literally a Colt Car 15. You name it, it's probably on here. The one that I was looking for was the Glock, which I find interesting because it's one of the most sold firearms in the world, but they're not going to ban that. It's also utilized a lot in killings too. It's a very unsafe firearm. I myself am a fan of Glocks, but you got SIGs on here, Springfields, of course. You can come on here and look, 9mm carbine rifles, the Uzi. I mean, there's all sorts of firearms that are listed. And here comes my point of this all, folks. None of this is going to stop the people that want to commit heinous, evil crimes from committing heinous and evil crimes. You creating a list of guns on here is not going to stop somebody from doing that specific action. AR-15's on here, the M16's on here, the M4 in all forms are on this list as well. Again, this, if you already have it in Washington, supposedly it's going to allow you to keep it. The point here is none of this stops mass shootings. None of this stops crime. They just don't understand that, or they do understand it. And again, the end goal, which I believe this to be true, I think the end goal is to remove the Second Amendment. I think the end goal at the end of the day is to make sure that nobody has firearms. Sure, they'll say, oh, well, you get to keep yours for now, but make sure you register it, by the way. Well, why register it? Why register it if there's no, what's the point of the registry? What are you going to come back later and remove it? That's why I don't like registries, by the way, because I don't want that to be tracked back later on when you do decide to chisel away my Second Amendment right, so much so that there is no Second Amendment right. So when there's no right, and you want to confiscate my firearms, well, it's on a registry now. Now you know where it's been. You can track everything, and ultimately you can see where I live, and then come by force with your guns from the government, because you get to have guns because somehow you're the cool guy and the good guy, and you're gonna be sold on us that you're the cool and good guy, and that I should listen to everything you say, all the while you're standing on my doorstep with guns pointing out my face, trying to remove my Second Amendment, or at least I should say at that point, just remove my firearms from the household. So I think that's the end goal. But the goal that they're pushing here of removing these firearms off the streets or not allowing the sale of doesn't solve the issue whatsoever. It's so astonishing to me that people buy into this crap. I mean, you got to be a full-fledged knucklehead to actually believe that this is a good move whatsoever, and this solves it. So if you can't use an AR-15, what's stopping you from, again, using a Glock? Glock 17, Glock 19, SIG, I mean, whatever it may be, the firearm of your choosing. What's stopping you from not utilizing those? It's not on the list, meaning you could buy it in the state of Washington. So wouldn't you just go buy the gun that's on the list to go commit your crime? Or just buy it illegally off the streets? I mean, heck, you name it. These criminals are going to do it, folks. But, you know, the law-abiding citizens are the ones that are going to be harmed by this because they can't protect themselves, whether that's from an actual criminal domestically or domestic a government such as ourselves going usurpacious, or a foreign government, which we all know there's a lot of governments out there that want to sit there and remove you off the face of this earth. But we can't talk about that because we'll be removed off YouTube. We can't talk about the actual true things that are happening, objective truths that we know that are taking place around the world, because all this stuff is way too sensitive for the average viewer, supposedly. I don't know. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.